What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back. Didn't expect to have this nice little intimate one-on-one with you guys, but big news dropping today. Philadelphia, Jim Schwartz, letting his contract run out, going on a one-year sabbatical. AKA, we're just trying to not throw him through the mud here. He's fired. Absolutely fired. It's like, hey, well, we won't give you the negative PR. You just, your contract runs out. I 100% think there's some sort of backroom politicking going on for this, but he's gone. I asked you guys on Twitter what you thought about it, just to kind of get an idea as I'm coming into this video. And it seems like everyone's generally happy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Jim Schwartz and how he's going to be remembered in Philadelphia. But more importantly, the meat and potatoes of this video is going to be who's going to come and replace him. I'm going to try my best. It's not going to be super, super in-depth, but it's a good starting point. Good list to get you guys some names to think about on the burner. Also, look at this. First piece of unofficial C4 merch. Got it made in Christmas. Special gift. I like it. Looks good. Looks pretty. Also, just finished recording episode 13 of the Madden 21 Philadelphia Eagles franchise. That'll be out to you guys tomorrow around lunchtime, just before the kickoffs. So you can digest that, you can enjoy it, and then see if your team's going to make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, get a high draft pick, play themselves out of a high draft pick. That is everything that'll be coming tomorrow. But today, defense. We're talking about Eagles defense. Jim Schwartz is gone. How are we going to look back on Jim Schwartz? Inconsistent. I think that's how you pretty much get to summarize it. For every good elite performance from a Jim Schwartz unit, there was an absolute liability performance from him. You never know what you're getting. Like, it oftentimes felt like when we were full strength, we would fall flat on our face. And when we were depleted with injuries, we would put forth an elite effort and find a way to win. And, I think the easiest thing is that when you look back at Jim Schwartz, I'm going to say inconsistent, lack of development of young players, Jim Schwartz's guys constantly just eating up snap counts, and we won the Super Bowl despite him. Like, that's kind of how I'm going to remember Jim Schwartz. But I will say that I absolutely could see a scenario where a year from now, looking back in hindsight, because Jim Schwartz, ultimately at the end, he'd meet about like midway of a DC. If we have a bad defensive coordinator next year, I think there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse. So you don't know what you had till it's gone with Jim Schwartz. There's a chance because, like I said, man, for every one absolute we lost that game because of Jim Schwartz, it'd be like maybe two that we won the game because of his unit, or at least it wasn't his fault. It was the offense that just absolutely sucked. So, I do think ultimately the chance of kind of hitting the reset a little bit on the defense is good. But we need to understand, especially as we get ready to go through some of these DC candidates, Jim Schwartz could not have left at a worse time. We have no money to help out a new defensive coordinator in terms of bringing players in via free agency. We have very little money and flexibility if we had to trade a player. So, that leaves the draft. And what is going to be priority number one in this draft? Fixing Carson Wentz, fixing the offense. At pick 5, go best player of Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, whoever. And now you're going to have that, like, what if we have to go defense? We have to help out our defense coordinator. It takes away from the team's number one priority, which is fixing Carson Wentz, salvaging Carson Wentz, maximizing Carson Wentz. And now you're going to have, like, especially if Howie Roseman's leading the board, he might panic. Say we're picking at 5. Surtain's on the board, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith's on the board, and Howie Roseman's going to be like, oh, D-tackle, we need a D-tackle. I hope Jim Schwartz is not the first move that happens. Let's just put it that way. Howie Roseman cannot be the guy that's head talent evaluator as we enter, hopefully, a top 5 pick in the draft. So, yeah, looking back at Jim Schwartz, inconsistent. Looking forward, here's some names. They're not in any real order. Some of these names are guys that I don't think I would consider, but I know you're going to see their names are going to be brought up on social media and on Eagle websites and stuff, so I'll kind of talk about it. And that prime candidate, number 1, Wade Phillips. Proven success. Generally had like an elite defense for the Rams. Head coaching experience. That's going to be something that's going to be interesting. Because you remember when Philadelphia hired Jim Schwartz, when we got Doug Peterson, a positive, an asset of Jim Schwartz was that he was experienced. It would help an inexperienced coach. I don't know now that it's our second time around, and we assume Doug Peterson's going to be back, that's going to be a quality that he wants. Doug Peterson might want more control over the defensive side of the ball. And therefore, these experienced guys that are going to be popping up on the candidate list could be less desirable for Philadelphia from that standpoint. But I think the biggest reason why Wade Phillips is less desirable for me, 2 reasons. 1, runs a 3-4. I don't think he would be like, hey, I'll run a 4-3. He's going to want to run a 3-4. We do not have the personnel to run a 3-4. We do not have the salary cap to get the personnel to run a 3-4. And Wade Phillips, much like Jim Schwartz, it's his scheme. Jim Schwartz was constantly coaching players to his scheme, not coaching his scheme to the players that he has. That is why a lot of people thought Wade Phillips got relieved of his duties in LA, because he was not very scheme flexible. And obviously with the Rams, things got very tight with the salary cap, and they're like, well, these are the players we have. And Wade Phillips is saying, like, that's not what I want. And I feel like that was kind of the butting of heads that led to his exit there in LA. And I just don't see any way or shape or form that Wade Phillips would work out here in Philadelphia. But he's going to be the top name on a lot of people's list to come in and replace Jim Schwartz. I just don't think it's a very good one. Everyone else on this list that I'm going to talk about, I think it's a good one. Before I get into the rest of the list, there are some honorable mentions. I might as well just get those out of the way because I'm not going to talk about them too much. Gus Bradley in LA, from the Legion of Boom. I think they could be clearing house there in LA, so he could be a name. Gerard Mayo, linebacker coach in New England. Brian Belichick, why not even think about that? The disciple of Bill Belichick. Terrell Austin in Pittsburgh. We have Raheem Morris. If he doesn't get the head coaching job in Atlanta, could be a top DC. Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator of Georgia Bulldogs. Young defensive coordinator, could be a little bit of a risk there. But someone I think would be worth bringing in for an interview. Georgia's defense, consistently one of the best in college football over the last couple of years. But here are more in-depth coaching candidates there for the Eagles DC job. I think Marvin Lewis. I'll put him here. Number 2, Marvin Lewis runs a 4-3. He's at Arizona State right now. I think Arizona State's defense has been very good. It's not all due to Marvin Lewis. They have also, I think Joey Porter's there. They got, obviously, oh my God, how can I not remember his name? Arizona State head coach. Herm Edwards. I don't even need to Google it. Herm Edwards is there, and he's a defensive guy. So it's not all down to Marvin Lewis, but I think I'm intrigued because Marvin Lewis, known for not so much his Bengals. He has experience with Bengals, was kind of a meme in the NFL last time he was here, but got the Bengals job because he was the head coach of the elite Raven defenses of the late 90s, early 2000s. So you take that old, right? That old, and you're a little bit worried that it's outdated. But he's been in college football for, 2 years now? So you'd be able to combine those two things. That's an interesting hire. That's an interesting interview because, you need to be able to stop today's modern day, it's almost glorified spread offenses in today's NFL. And the best way to do that is get where it's coming from, the defense in college. Have someone that has some success in college of stopping these offenses. Pair that with that little bit of old school that Marvin Lewis has. And for all accounts, there's a reason why Marvin Lewis was in Cincinnati for so long. It wasn't because he had, weird, lewd images of the owner. He's a terrific player coach. The players love playing for Marvin Lewis. So I think absolutely, as much of a meme he was, as much as I just think negatively of Marvin Lewis last time he's in the NFL, as a pure defensive coordinator, absolutely going to kick the tires on that. Flexible. I think he can work with a lot of the pieces that we have on this. He puts importance on linebackers, which is something in a position that has been absolutely lacking here in Philadelphia. He does have that head coach experience, which could be a positive, but also, much like kind of Wade Phillips and Jim Schwartz, could be a negative for Doug Peterson if he's looking for candidates. But I think absolutely Marvin Lewis might be top of my list right now. I have one name that's a little bit out there that's probably top of my list, but Marvin Lewis, in terms of realistic, safe type potential hires, he's probably as safe as it gets. Number 3 is Chris Richard. Runs the cover 3. He's a free agent after leaving Dallas. I don't really know how things ended there in Dallas. A lot of people were surprised because he was a guy that a lot of people thought would get an outright defensive coordinator position because he was kind of like a co-DC or even head coach because a lot of people like him. All the reports, all the things that I was just doing from quick, he's a leader, vocal leader, players love him, players coach, was able to come in and help the secondary. He's a secondary background, and he has lots of upside. A lot of people are saying he could potentially be like the next Robert Saleh, who's one of the hottest names in terms of defensive coordinators in the NFL for what he's been able to do there in San Francisco. But the negatives for Chris Richard is, let's be honest, much like Bill Belichick disciples, it feels like any coach that had any part to do with the Legion of Boom in Seattle has kind of fallen flat. Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn. So you have that little bit of risk of Chris Richard's. Like, Philadelphia's secondary right now is very far from anything that they had in the Legion of Boom. So if we don't have the personnel, is he going to be exposed? Because that's kind of what his strength is. Obviously, experience, play calling experience. He's not near the level of Wade Phillips or Marvin Lewis. So that is something that to be considered. But I definitely think he's a DC candidate that should be interviewed by Philadelphia. They should do their due diligence. And it'd be an interesting hire. Get a guy with upside. Get a guy that's young, fresh, new ideas, which is exactly what Philadelphia needs to bring through all phases of their front office, through all phases of their team. So Richard, definitely someone to keep a name on. Number 4, got Dan Quinn, runs a 4-3, recently fired, became available from Atlanta. I think he has head coaching experience. Again, I don't necessarily know. We're going to say that for everyone that has that. A positive or negative for Philadelphia, but it's always kind of a positive. An easy transition. I think a big positive for Dan Quinn. I think he's going to be a kind of guy that comes in and looks at a roster and goes, I can work with this. I'm not going to need a whole lot of flashy pieces. Let's just try different things with the personnel that's already in place for Philadelphia. I think it's going to be a positive for him. The negative for Dan Quinn, again, Legion of Boom has, got his head coaching job in Atlanta because of Legion of Boom, and it didn't really work out. The Falcons defense was not particularly good. And the Gator fan in me kind of just wants Florida to fire Todd Grantham and for Dan Quinn to go back to Florida. Florida desperately needs a defense coordinator because their defense was like bottom 5 in college this year. But I do think something interesting with Dan Quinn is, and I like to look at Frank Reich. Frank Reich was not good. The offense that he had in San Diego with Philip Rivers and company was not good when he got let go and then Philadelphia ended up hiring him. Could be kind of similar here for Dan Quinn. Like, Dan Quinn clearly has had a lot of success at points in time in his career on the defense side of the ball, but his defense wasn't really good at the end there in Atlanta. So there's a chance, I don't want to completely dismiss Dan Quinn because the Falcons defense wasn't particularly good the last couple seasons because they still were, the Super Bowl year and stuff. A lot of that happened with Kyle Shanahan on the offense, but the defense was pretty damn good too. So there could be a little bit of Frank Reich similarities here from Dan Quinn, at least enough for me not to completely write him off as a potential hire here in Philadelphia. Number 5, I got 2 more left for you. Number 5, Jamiko Ryan. If you're watching the Philadelphia Eagles Madden franchise, that's who I hired to come in to be the DC. Runs a 4.3. He's currently the San Francisco 49ers linebacker coach. He has history with the team. He's Mufasa. And you could see when he was here in Philadelphia, that style of player that he is, a leader. You could tell he was a guy that's destined to become a coach at some point in the NFL. I think that you have the linebacking development going on in San Francisco. Really good. Dre Greenlaw kind of went as a late round pick. Very, very good starter. You have Fred Warner, who was drafted as a, okay linebacker, depth linebacker. Now, according to Aaron Rodgers, best linebacker in the NFL. So I'm very intrigued with that. But also the biggest negative is experience. That's a pretty big leap. That's a pretty big leap to just go from becoming a linebacker coach to becoming outright the defensive coordinator. And is that a leap Philadelphia wants to make? Is that a leap Philadelphia wants to make, knowing that we're going to be handicapped in terms of salary cap, in terms of molding this defense in the eyes of a young defensive coordinator? He's pretty much got to work with what we have, and that could be a tough predicament for a inexperienced coach like Jamiko Ryan would be. So as much as I like the thought of nostalgia bringing back with Mufasa, I think it'd be absolutely a failure not to bring him in for an interview. Could be tough, man. That could be a big leap. That could be something I kind of get all the people that want Deuce Staley to become an OC and stuff, because Deuce Staley, former player, even though I've never shared that sentiment, that feeling, I kind of have that with Jamiko Ryan on the defensive side of the ball. It's just, I don't know, man. That's a big jump. And I guess while we're talking about this, isn't Luke Kuechly into coaching? That could be the ultimate Hail Mary of all time. I would absolutely actually think about that. Luke Kuechly, what is it? Did he do something on, was it Carolina? I would 100%. I didn't even write that down. I'm just thinking about it right now. I would 100% interview Luke Kuechly to be my defensive coordinator. I think I have my number 1 hire. Luke Kuechly. Why not? He could be the next the best players for the most part that convert from player to coach are linebackers because of the QBs of the defense. I think Luke Kuechly's my number 1 hire. I'm putting that down there right now. All in. Let's do it. I mean, positive Luke Kuechly's Luke Kuechly. Negatives. Big gamble. But put that there on my list just right now. Luke Kuechly, number 1. Didn't think I would even have that in this video. Anyways, my last candidate after Luke Kuechly, we're looking at college, and it's going to be Jim Leonard, the Wisconsin defense coordinator. Now, he runs a 3-4 there. That kind of comes into the negative against Wade Phillips. What's his flexibility going to be? But not Howie. I don't want to give Howie credit. Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner. I think he's one of the best owners in the NFL. And I think this is going to be a big offseason for him to prove that he's the best owner in the NFL. He's not going to get complacent. He's going to make tough decisions when he need to be. But the biggest thing for Jeffrey Lurie is he always wants to be on the forefront. He always wants to be innovating. He always wants to be staying up with the trends. And if you're doing that, you're going to want to stop the new modern NFL offenses. And the best place to do that is not getting an old turd like Wade Phillips or Marvin Lewis, Dan Quinn. You get it at its grassroots, which is college. And I think he's the best college DC right now, is Jim Leonard. Young, definitely can build and grow around him. If we could just throw out the 3-4, assume that, hey, he would come in and look at this, if he even got an interview, and be like, I can work with a 4-3, let's go, baby. His Wisconsin defenses have been absolutely elite and consistently elite since he's been there in 2017. Like, they're top 10, it feels like, almost every single year. He's a defensive back specialist, which is huge because we need development in the defensive back in the biggest of ways. The negatives is obviously lack of experience. It's a massive jump for him. Maybe not so much as Jamiko Ryan's. Like, it's not ridiculously a big stretch because he's been coaching a long time in college, but it's definitely a gamble. NFL's a different game. He's young. There's going to be maybe some leadership questions because, there's going to be some players that are roughly like the same kind of age. Like, I played with you. There's always that. I look at that as I'm an Arsenal fan, Arsenal soccer fan. Our head coach is Arteta. And like, there's always like some leadership questions. Like, I played with you. You're like, your former player is now your head coach. He's now your superior. That could be a little bit of a weird dynamic. But I think Jim Leonard, if he is flexible and isn't going to be tied to that 3-4, absolutely should be someone Philadelphia looks at kicking the tires on. If you want to get that grassroots, how do we stop this modern day NFL spread offense? You go to college and you get the best that college has to offer. And I think that might be Jim Leonard. But another big negative, he seems like he's all in on Wisconsin. Like he turned down like Bama jobs and stuff like that. I don't know if he's holding out to become the new Wisconsin head coach, but it could be very tough to pry him away from Wisconsin. He's very happy at where he's at. So there you go, fellas. Honestly, if I had to seriously rank my coordinators, I think I would have Marvin Lewis at 1. I'll put Luke Kuechly at 2. And then it's just a logjam between Chris Richard, Dan Quinn, Jamiko Ryan, Jim Leonard. But those are just names I'm throwing out. Definitely let me know in the comment section below if there's a guy I didn't talk about that you think should be in consideration for Philadelphia. Let me know. Definitely would like to do more work. And I'm assuming as soon as maybe some names get linked and tied to Philadelphia, I could come back, revisit, maybe have some more notes and a different opinion on some of these players. But that's kind of where I'm starting out here, fellas. Let me know in the comment section below. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Lots of Eagles content. You guys seem to be enjoying these videos. I'm going to turn them up when appropriate and applicable. Hit that like button if you enjoyed. Likes help the videos in the old YouTube algorithm. That's all I ask is a big thumbs up. Helps with my channel. Helps keep my channel above water. But that'll do it for me today, guys. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow with episode 13 of the Eagles franchise and post-game grades from the Eagles and football team game. See you then. Peace out. Go Eagles.